Good afternoon, everybody. Peter Ariz here alongside D Money, and welcome into Group Chat Football Live, our daily show where we talk transfer portal movement, coaching movement, and everything else here in terms of college football. It's the craziest time of year for the portal and everything alike. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Week 2 of the portal nearing an end here, and things continue to pick up.
Yeah, a lot of action in, out. New names jumping in, up to the wire. We just saw a huge name enter from Wisconsin, one of the top young corners in the country, Xavier Lucas, jumping in. A lot of people expect him to end up at Miami. That's my expectation as well. But we're going to just take it all the way across the country. Bill Belichick's adding kickers, all kinds of stuff, but really some big name additions for some big name schools at premium positions, particularly up front.
We'll start with possibly the biggest name that was in the portal, John Mateer, and this was a quick process for him as he enters the portal earlier this week officially and then ends up heading down there to Oklahoma from Washington State, follows his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, and it was a really great season for him at Washington State, putting up career numbers, 3,139 passing yards, 29 touchdowns. Was a big-time threat on the ground as well with 15 rushing touchdowns. And you're looking at a guy who's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country. Brent Venables wasn't a great season for him at Oklahoma. And I'm kind of looking at this like he could be a savior for where this program's at right now.
Yeah, to me, Mateer is on day one the best quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. You look at what he did at Washington State, and I understand Washington State is no longer a Power 5 program. But when you look at what he did, running and passing, he was probably the top dual threat quarterback in the country, along with Jalen Milroe. You had Cam Ward, who's more of a pass first guy. He comes in, Mateer, top 10 in the nation in passer rating, throwing it down the field with a high, healthy 8+ yard per clip. But then he's also running, and not just running to create throwing angles, but running with power. He is a 500+ guy in the squat, can run inside at a tremendous rate. You spread out the receivers where he can hit them with his arm, but now you're spread out. He can kill you inside. Reminds me in that respect of Jalen Hurts, another guy with tremendous quickness and lower body strength. Went to Oklahoma. Of course, John Mateer following in the footsteps. Hurts his senior year at Oklahoma had 3,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing. I believe that Mateer can do the same thing at Oklahoma, that 3,000, 1,000 yard plateau. He was close this year, which I think he'll be able to do. Now, of course, first order of business for Oklahoma, you got to improve that offensive line, which is one of the worst in the country. You're in the 130s in sack percentage against D1 opponents. That has to improve. Mateer's mobility will help that, but you still got to get better players up front, and you got to fill in this receiving core. But a huge, huge get for Oklahoma. And again, Mateer, to me, you could talk about Arch Manning. You could talk about maybe Diego Pavia coming back. We'll talk about some of the movement in the SEC, and of course the portal is going to dictate a lot of this. But to me, I don't think there's going to be a better quarterback in that conference, arms, legs, production, experience, than John Mateer.
Well, and if you're an OU fan, are you looking at this like, man, we just had Jackson Arnold, who was one of the top quarterbacks in the country, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country here, and it wasn't necessarily all his fault because of the situation up front and the injuries around that at the skill positions. So are you banking everything on Mateer, or like you said, I mean, how much of an improvement do you need to see from the other position groups there offensively? And then, of course, new offensive coordinator coming in Ben Arbuckle.
We've added Luke Buklenko as an offensive lineman. You will add more. And then, not coincidentally, as the same day that Mateer signs with Oklahoma, you had 2 receivers sign up for a receiving core that's been depleted by transfer portal, previously depleted by injuries. It really went away fast. But you do at Keontez Lewis. He was a Southern Illinois, originally a D1 kid, UCLA, Wisconsin, goes to Southern Illinois, boost up his stock, has a productive season. Then also you dip into the FCS for Arkansas Pine Bluff transfer. Sorry, not the FCS, for the G5, Arkansas Pine Bluff transfer, Giovanni Gibbs, another highly productive player to add to the roster and give Mateer someone to throw to. You also had at Burks, his top receiver last year, Oklahoma's top receiver last year, Purdue transfer who was hurt. He was with Mateer on the visit, so you get him back healthy. And now you're starting to see the outlines of a pretty nice receiving core. again, last year with Jackson Arnold, you did not see the best out of Jackson Arnold. He was also a dual threat quarterback. Even in the games like he beat Alabama, over 60 yards passing. So even the games that he played well, it was not prolific like what you've seen from Mateer, Washington State. I don't think that's a Jackson Arnold problem necessarily. He went to Auburn for a reason. He got money for a reason. He's a pretty good football player. But Mateer's a more fully realized product, a more dominant product. By the way, Arkansas Pine Bluff is FCS. I apologize earlier. I said they were G5. They're actually FCS. So that's a move up. But I think Mateer, when you look at the physical traits, the size, the quickness, the arm strength, all that will translate. If some of these lower tier receivers can jump to the next level, and you bring in Deion Burks back to full health, you're starting an outline of an improved offense.
And just putting a bow on this news right here, the Mateer, as December 2nd, Ben Arbuckle was named the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. It seemed like it was always trending in that direction. Miami tried to get themselves in the mix there. Obviously, Cam Ward was at Washington State. We saw what he did at Miami this year. But that one seemed like for a while it was going to trend towards this way.
Yeah, it's some people think that with Arbuckle going over there, it was almost like a term of the agreement. The Mateer would come with him. I'm not sure that's the case, but certainly that helped. He's from Little Elm, Texas, which is right outside of Dallas. That's about an hour and a half drive from Norman. It makes a lot of sense. He seems like he fits in with the players already. You saw him posting pictures on campus, excited to be there. So assuming you can get the offensive line and the wide receiver core where it needs to be, I think it's a good fit. But as a player, to me, the best quarterback in the SEC the second he steps on campus.
So a common theme that we've seen here across the country here in the portal, D, is teams looking for big old defensive tackles that can fill some space, can move a little bit. But at the end of the day, they want guys who are big, physical, and strong in there. And that is what Michigan is adding here with Damon Payne coming over from Alabama. He was really more of a rotational guy at Bama, but a big recruit, top 50 recruit out of Belleville, Michigan, coming out in the class of 2021. And Sherrone Moore, a guy who has been vocal about wanting to get more physical at Michigan in the trenches. It's always in the Big Ten. You got to be physical in the trenches there, obviously. But Damon Payne, again, not a lot of production. You're not going to see huge sack numbers from that position. But if you're a Michigan fan, you have to feel pretty good about this move with Payne coming over.
Yeah, even with all the struggles Michigan had this year coming off the championship, they still had the best defensive tackles by far in the nation with Mason Grant, Kenneth Grant, 2 first-round picks. So you don't want to drop off. And Pete, you'll pull up some film here, but just to see what kind of run plugger Damon Payne is. But Sherrone Moore had a quote, which I think speaks to, it wasn't in the context of Damon Payne, but it speaks to why you add a player like that. He said, just kind of like what you saw in the Ohio State game, the physicality, I want to turn that up to another level. The toughness, the strain that we had in that game was outstanding, but I want to get bigger. I want to get faster. I want to get stronger. So, I mean, again, some of that's coach speak, but I think he's pointing to the fact that Michigan, with all their flaws, was able to out physical their rival, a top 10 team, and win that huge game, just starting with Graham and Grant. They're out the door. You do not want to lose that staple of your team that you are tough in the trenches. It's been that way for a while, starting with Jim Harbaugh. Bring in Damon Payne. He's someone that's not going to, again, like Pete, you said, these are not the most dynamic highlights. You see the wide body, even double teams, he can handle them. He can get off blocks. He can make the tackle. He's just hard to move, man. No relation to Daron Payne, like you said, who's probably more of an athletic guy. This is your plugger. He's coming back home. He's originally from Bellevue, Michigan. And
you see that film against
Belleville, Michigan.
Yeah.
I apologize.
You see that film against Michigan, so it was pretty easy for them to understand, just watching the tape and knowing what you have on the other side there, the caliber of player and the strength that because it's hard to see strength on film sometimes, but it's very easy to see it in comparison to what your guys have.
Absolutely. And age. It's not just the size, right? Sometimes you have size as immature size. This is a class of 2021 player. So he's been in college now going on to his 5th year. That physical maturity, all those years in the trenches, in the weight room, on the practice field. He's hardened. He is ready to play at the Big Ten level. Of course, he's coming from the SEC, so the level of competition is not going to be a change. But defensive tackle, you just need a little bit of age. You can recruit as many blue chippers as you want, and you need to. You need age. David Payne. A lot of guys with this talent level are in the NFL. Because he is not a pass rushing type of defensive tackle, his style of play is somewhat less in vogue in the NFL draft, but still plays very, very well in college where the running game is so important. I think it's a nice fit, nice pickup for Michigan.
So this was one of the stories of the year in a sense, in terms of Vanderbilt, and they're beating Bama, kind of putting themselves on the map in the top 25. And at the center of all of that was star quarterback Diego Pavia. And the news came out yesterday. This is pretty big stuff here, as it could potentially set a precedent moving forward. But a federal judge in Tennessee granted an injunction Wednesday that allows Vandy QB Diego Pavia to pursue another year of eligibility. He had sued the NCAA back in November and had been fighting this. Essentially, he did not want his years of eligibility in junior college to count towards his years here in the NCAA, as JUCO is legislated by a whole different body. And his argument and his attorney's argument was, in JUCO level, you're limited in what you can do NIL-wise, and those shouldn't be counted as years of eligibility because of that. So, D, for those of you who don't know, you have a background as an attorney yourself, so you have an understanding after reading the way that this situation has kind of played out. What sort of precedent does this set moving forward? And if you can kind of break this down to us who don't really understand the minute details.
Yeah, just reading through the full memorandum of opinion, and this is not necessarily binding precedent on every single jurisdiction, but typically a decision like this will be the guiding force that the NCAA will abide by in terms of enforcing or not enforcing their own rules. This is coming from a federal court in Tennessee, which also was the federal court. I don't believe it was the same district, but there's a federal court in Tennessee that enjoined the NCAA's enforcement of their own NIL rules early on in the process. If you hear the Tennessee case, when people talk about this NIL stuff, that's what they're talking about. This is a new Tennessee case, different issue, which is JUCO eligibility. So when you go to court and you ask for a preliminary injunction, that means you're skipping steps. So usually you'd file your complaint, and there'd be motions, you'd set hearings. The hearings get scheduled sometimes very far in advance, depending on how busy the court is and how long the hearing is. That can be months in advance. When you seek a preliminary injunction, that means you're skipping steps because you need this extraordinary remedy. And you can't just always grant preliminary injunctions, because otherwise people would be doing them all the time and you skip all the other steps. That's not what they want. So it's only in very extraordinary circumstances that you'd grant a preliminary injunction to stop something that you say someone else is doing that's unfair. In this case, the NCAA enforcing their eligibility rules regarding junior colleges. So to get a preliminary injunction, you need to show the likelihood of success, irreparable harm. Irreparable harm meaning, well, let's break it down. Likelihood of success means you got to show that you're probably going to win, because you can't just go into court on an emergency basis and stop things if you're not likely to win. Otherwise, people do it all the time just on a lark. You have to show that you'd be irreparably harmed if there's no injunction. So you have to do this fast. Otherwise, if something goes forward, this injustice goes forward, I'm in trouble. In this case, if Pavia can't play, he loses his prime years, right? Balance of the equities and public interest, we'll treat these together. Basically, it gives the court discretion to say, this is, we're doing something that's fair to the person, and we're doing something that's in the public interest. And that's why we're granting this extraordinary remedy of a preliminary injunction. Okay, first question is, do antitrust laws apply to the NCAA? Basically what Pavia was saying was that the NCAA's eligibility rules violated antitrust law. So the first question is, does antitrust law apply? The courts quickly said yes, because NIL and other things have become part of the college game. It is clearly a commercial enterprise. And because it is a commercial enterprise, antitrust rules apply. Second question is whether it was a undue restraint on trade. Basically, was this something that's hurting trade to the detriment of consumers? And they look at various factors. I won't get into the nitty gritty, but the court ultimately said the players here, the college players, are a labor market. Guys who sign D1 out of high school have a distinct advantage over junior college players, because the D1 players can play 4 years of D1. The JUCO players can only play, let's say, 2 years of D1. And they lose that ability to make money on NIL, which is pretty much exclusive for D1 players as a matter of practice, those first 2 years. So here's what the court said. I'll quote exactly. In summary, the eligibility bylaws induce potential football players to attend NCAA institutions rather than non-NCAA institutions like junior colleges, which are outside the NCAA, even when non-NCAA institutions such as junior colleges might be in their best interest. Therefore, the rule harms student athletes when they are making decisions on whether to attend a junior college or an NCAA institution. In other words, if you're an athlete and you might want to go to junior college because it betters your career, Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers are guys that went junior college, not even because they liked the grades, just because they wanted to play and they wanted to get their stock up. This opinion is saying guys like that are hurt because they only get 2 years to make money in college as opposed to 4. Of course, there was no NIL for those guys, but if there was, they wouldn't be able to get NIL money for the 4 years. Some of the arguments NCAA made is basically this distorts the natural graduation timeline because guys could go to JUCO and then go to 4 years of D1. Kids might come into college older, all that. And what the court said is, look, you already have prep school. 1 year of prep school, it doesn't affect your NCAA eligibility. So that already exists. Mormons come in late and other people like that, maybe Army, people working in the armed services, they can come into college late and they're older. You allow that. And now redshirt rules are becoming more favorable, right? It's becoming easier to redshirt and get an extra year. That's the direction of the rules. And the court noted that and said, look, all these rules are making players older. Plus you have the portal. So teams are getting older by the portal. It doesn't make sense that this junior college restriction protects any sort of youth movement in college football when it's really becoming an older man's game by your own rules. So that's ultimately what happened. The court said the bylaws cannot be enforced to Diego Pavia. He can play the junior college years, which is only 1 in his case, I believe, don't count against his eligibility. And he'll be able to play for Vanderbilt next year. I think other junior college players will be able to point to this ruling and say, NCAA, you cannot enforce your bylaws against me and make me ineligible. So huge news for all the junior college players. And it now presents an option for junior college players to go improve their game, get stronger, get better film, and then go apply for D1, have 4 years as opposed to losing the years. They're not really giving up their eligibility by going to JUCO and developing that way. So great news for junior colleges and great news for junior college players. And we'll see where this goes. And if this is folded into a larger discussion of the rules. But right now, I think that if you're a junior college player, you can plan on playing more years than just the 2.
Yeah, Ian Coleman here asked, D-Money, can we keep Markel Bell for 3 years now with the JUCO rule? A Miami fan asking about Miami's left tackle, Markel Bell, who came over from the JUCO ranks. And as D-Money just alluded to, there seems to be a door open for something like that to be looked at there.
Yep. Yes. The answer is yes.
And then, just quickly here before we move on, how big is this for Vanderbilt football, man? Obviously, it was a 6-6 season, but it felt like way better than that. They dropped their last 3 games of the year, but beating Bama, playing Texas the way that they did, it was a 3-point game. But in terms of trying to build on the success they had this year, this has to be, just absolutely massive news for them.
As a college football fan, right? I'm not ready for the Diego Pavia experience to end. It was so much fun to watch. Obviously, a huge boon for Vanderbilt to beat Alabama seemed unthinkable, and they did it in really emphatic fashion. It was not a fluke at all. So I think for college football, this is fun. You hope that Pavia could stay in Vanderbilt. It seems like he is based on some of his social media activity. He's not just trying to go back in the portal and make more money. But if he does stay at Vanderbilt, I think it's an awesome fit. Obviously, the offense is fit like a glove, and it's going to be a lot of fun for college football. And I think, just me stepping outside, I think the reasoning that the court used made sense. You already have older players. You have prep school players. You have Mormons. You have guys that are 25 in college with the redshirt rules, with the COVID rule, which I understand was an extraordinary situation. So letting these JUCO guys get their grades right, get their body right, and then go to college, it's just creating more opportunities for players. It's going to help junior colleges. It's going to help the colleges who now have a wider pool of players to choose from. And if you're a student athlete that needs time, it could help you as well to get your grades right, to get your body right, whatever. Now you come in the same terms as a freshman. I think it's a great thing, and it encourages people to go to community colleges and get right without just trying to latch on to it. Let's say someone maybe says, junior college, that's not going to help me. It's going to take my eligibility anyways. And then they go try to make it in D1. It's not the right fit. And then they stop playing football and they're out and their lives are different. this gives people a chance to be their best selves and to improve themselves and have continued opportunities. I'm in favor of this decision.
All right, D. Well, when you're the number one team in the country, you can be a little selective in what you do in the transfer portal. And Dan Lanning is he's doing a very good job of that after landing the number one safety in the portal, Dylan Tiedemann from Purdue earlier this week. He landed a big one in the last 24 hours here as Isaiah World from Nevada, a guy at the tackle position who has been very highly sought after in the portal, is on his way to Oregon. He's going to be a Duck. This is a guy 6'8", 309. So you see the body composition, athletic build, has started 35 games in a row at Nevada, all conference honorable mention the last couple of years. They were 3-10 this year. So you're not giving too many all conference awards, first team all conference awards to offensive linemen of 3-10 teams. But I think you're looking at the body type here. You're looking at the development that he's made since he came out of high school when he was 270 pounds. And you're looking at an Oregon program that's losing both of their starting tackles. I wanted to give a shout out to their offensive line coach, Alik Terry. D. This is a guy that you and I watched in his high school days down here in Miami at the center position, went on to play at Wake Forest, and is one of the rising stars there. He got that Oregon O-line job at a pretty young age, under the age of 30, and he's absolutely killing it right now. This is a huge pickup for him.
Yeah, I remember watching him in high school. Always were fans of his. Very athletic, very smart. Obviously, the IQ is translated to coaching. With Isaiah World, like you mentioned, the frame stands out. You could see it on film, not just the numbers, the way he's built, the length, the lean body type, the big hands. He just looks the part. I love the experience. 35 straight starts, 852 snaps at left tackle. Even if it's a lower level, you want experience. You don't want guys that have not played, especially if you're a team like Oregon, that you have high expectations. You need guys to come in ready to play. He is somebody who has a lot of upside, but is obviously proven. So usually when we talk about a guy from the class of 21 who is now going to be a fifth-year player, they're not necessarily proven. They're not necessarily an upside play. But with him, he does have more room to grow physically. I think a full offseason at that area, Oregon is just unreal, as we know from the sports science, the strength and conditioning. So I think he, just looking at his body, he has room to still grow. He was 270 in high school, coming out of San Diego, Lincoln High School. He's still got room to grow. He's going to get stronger, and he's still he has room to be better coached. I mean, not whether it's, I'll say coach, better developed, right? It's not just the coaching. It's the fact that you're going against better players in practice. There's a lot to development besides just this level of coaching versus that. But Oregon, of course, has great coaching, great environment to develop. That's one thing they pride their program on. This is a great fit. You look at Johnny Cornelius. He came from Rhode Island, so even less competition than Nevada. Ends up being a starting tackle on what could be a national championship team for Oregon. You lose Nishad Strother. You lose Marcus Harper. So you lose a lot of tackles. Josh Connerly probably going to go pro is my guess, although he could come back. But if he does, now you're losing 4 tackles. Must get Isaiah World. I think he's going to fit in great, and he's going to potentially develop into an NFL player based on what you see from his Nevada film.
Not all good news for Oregon, as 5-star Dallas Wilson, who signed with them a couple weeks ago on early National Signing Day, has asked for a release from his financial paperwork with Oregon and is expected to sign with the Florida Gators. This is someone from the state of Florida. Tampa Bay Tech High School was the number 3 player in the state of Florida. Again, 5-star recruit. Big-bodied receiver at 6'3", almost 200 pounds, has some speed. But this has been an up-and-down recruitment. Again, someone that you and I have followed closely because Miami was in the mix here as well, and you and I do our work with CanesInsight.com. So we are, pretty familiar with how this recruitment has gone. I can't say this move surprises me all that much, as there was a lot of momentum for Florida late in the process here.
Yeah, he's someone that I've watched in person this summer. He was playing at the OT7 7-on-7 final, so I saw him in person. Obviously seen him on film a ton from a younger age in the Tampa area. Huge frame, big, strong kid. He's physically exactly what you want, and he's also extremely fast. Sometimes these big guys are just lumbering. This is a fast, twitchy, explosive guy with some change of direction as well. You see him returning kicks, which is unusual for someone this size, but run after catch, just raw athleticism, size. That's what upside. That's what he brings to the table. A quarterback like DJ Lagway that likes to chuck it down the field, I think it's a fit for him. Plus, that's a big draw, I think, for why he ended up not going through with his Oregon pledge and signing with Oregon. He signed with them, but not going through with it because he wanted to play with DJ Lagway. Of course, there's financial considerations involved. Florida's putting all their chips in to build around DJ Lagway because, you're going to buy out Napier. You don't buy out Napier. Now you have more money to play with. You're building around Lagway, who's tied to Napier, and you're going to add 5-star players like a Dallas Wilson. When you compare him to a Vernell Brown, who the Gators also signed, I think Vernell Brown's much more ready to play, just more mature professional mindset, more mature game. He's ready to play right away. Wilson physically is ready, but I think he's going to need some time on his route running, just his overall craft. However, what you're seeing right here, the kick return, I think that's something he could do right away on the kickoffs because of his size, his speed, and experience doing it. There you see him right there, running like an absolute gazelle. Saw him at the 7-on-7 circuit, like I mentioned. Not the best environment for him because the run out after the catch stuff wasn't as prominent. Guys like Jamie French, Vernell Brown, probably more finely tuned route runners. But put him in pads. This guy can make a lot of plays. Huge upside. If it hits, it's a 5-star for a reason. There's a potential first-round player at wide receiver. And then on the Oregon side, you got some pretty good receivers, man. You got DeCorian Moore, who's probably the best receiver prospect I've seen in a long time, among others. They'll be okay. I think they moved on quickly when they saw this was going sideways just because they're trying to win a national championship. They got a lot of stuff going on. They already got good receivers in the boat. They're going to get good receivers in the transfer portal as well. So I don't think that was a major concern. Obviously, 5-star player, you want to keep him, but I didn't sense that they were trying to drop everything to keep Dallas Wilson. He probably means more to the Florida program and DJ Lagway and the future of that group than to Oregon.
Well, and I was going to say, if you're Florida, yes, the expectation may not be for him to be a day one impact player, but you'd expect him to be in the mix, considering one of their issues this year was lacking speed on the perimeter, especially once Trey Wilson went out for the year with injury.
Yeah, you need a lot. And I mean, when you have DJ Lagway, he was probably the best deep thrower in the conference once he started playing. So a guy like this who can really, really run, maybe the timing and the finely tuned routes, the whole Peyton Manning to Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison, where they just could perfectly time the delivery of the ball to the route and everything was step-by-step perfect. That's not really Lagway's game. He's an off platform guy. He's someone who's going to hang on to the ball with his physicality and athleticism and then chuck it. And Wilson has the ability to get downfield in a hurry. His turnover, he's a long player, but his ability to turn over his strides as opposed to just being kind of those lumbering strides is really, really unique. His twitch and size is unique at his size. That's why he's a 5-star. Production is good, not elite. But I think if you really work on this player and get him to where he could be, the upside is through the roof.
Another receiver that we're going to talk about here, this time a guy who has been very productive at the D1 level here, Eric Rivers, transferring from FIU to Georgia Tech. And, of course, Georgia Tech losing Eric Singleton. A lot of people consider him the number one receiver in the portal right now. Auburn, Miami, amongst others in the mix there. But Eric Rivers, man, very interesting story for him, who was a former walk-on at Memphis coming out of high school. Transfers to FIU, 370 yards his first year, and then takes off this year. 62 catches, 1,172 yards, 12 touchdowns. More of a slot guy for FIU and probably moving forward for Georgia Tech, but someone who really, I mean, you got to give him credit after having been a walk-on and working himself up to this point. Have to like this pickup for Georgia Tech. You're losing a lot of production with Singleton, and this is a guy who can eat up a lot of those targets.
Yeah, Rivers is extraordinarily productive, right? So you look at the numbers: 62 receptions, 1,172 yards, 12 touchdowns. But it was really an unusual path to get there, right? He's from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's not from South Florida. Originally walks on to Memphis in high school, red shirts, plays mostly special teams, comes to FIU, gets a scholarship, gets about 370 yards last year. Then this year completely erupts, physically matures a little bit. He was a slender guy, so the added weight helped. Had a 295-yard, 3-touchdown game against New Mexico State. But you dig into the background to understand the athlete at Chattanooga. He was at Macaulay School. He won a state title playing wide receiver, cornerback, kick returner. Then on the hardwood, 17 points per game, 5.1 rebounds per game, 4.8 assists per game, and 2.1 steals. That's a nice line. We always watch basketball player box scores for when you're evaluating these football prospects here on the show. Is something we believe in strongly. Those are really good numbers. Then you look on the track, PRs of 6'4" in the high jump. He's only 5'11". That's a big number. 8'11.75 in the pole vault, 22 and 1.5 inches in the long jump, 44 and 5.5 inches in the triple jump, 16.02 seconds in the 110 hurdles. And he competed in the decathlon with the 5.743 PR, state titles in the triple jump and long jump. That's a decorated track athlete, getting it done on the hardwood, all over the field, on the football field. Now you put him, obviously FIU, he was getting it done. Put him in the ACC with Georgia Tech, one of the more creative offenses in the country, known for their running game, but they can throw and they can get the ball in their hands of their playmakers in many different ways. You saw that with Singleton. Was a $1 million plus player, but he can probably replicate what Singleton gave you on the field.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have to really give FIU staff as well credit for bringing him in, right? Whoever found him down there, because it's not like he was a guy who was playing much at Memphis when he came over. So give them credit for finding and developing him. And now he's got a real opportunity here in the ACC to improve his draft stock moving forward.
Yep. No, excited to watch him play. Again, that track background and that basketball background, and then the production. Those are three pretty big check marks for me.
All right. So one last move to talk about here, and it's a pretty significant one for Alabama as they're bringing in former Utah corner Cameron Calhoun. And this is a guy who didn't start a lot of games for Utah this season, but played in 11 games. Size, 6 foot, 177, former 4-star recruit who actually signed with Michigan in the 2023 class out of Cincinnati. And this is someone who, again, didn't start this year, but still has a lot of untapped potential. And if you're Alabama, number 31 ranked pass defense in the country for the Crimson Tide, not terrible, but with their history there at defensive back, they want to be close to the top 15, top 10.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you look at Alabama's young secondary. You got Xavier Brown, Xavier Mincy, Jalen Mbakwe, who entered the portal and came back. These are 5-star type guys who played, who have tremendous athletic ability at the defensive back spot in the cornerback position. So to add another young corner with multiple years of eligibility, you're really, really banking on this room being a strength going forward. And when you look at Calhoun, Utah's a very, very good program, very good at evaluating defensive backs. Kyle Whittingham's always been good at evaluating defensive backs to get to the next level. Went to Winton Woods High School in Cincinnati. Former receiver, had 14 INTs in his career, which is a school record. Cincinnati plays outstanding football. Noted for his work ethic, 110-meter and 300-meter hurdler. So a very good athlete, tough player. Teammate with Alabama freshman signee Justin Hill. So Alabama goes back to the well a little bit. But this is a guy I think can help Alabama right away, and they're probably going to be set at corner for the foreseeable future. When you look at the young talent that you have at that position, it's got to be probably the best collection of young defensive back talent in the entire SEC. And it's funny because last year we was worried about Alabama in the secondary. You start all these young players and they get experience. You add another experienced player here in Calhoun. Now it's overnight. It's a strength, and it's going to be a strength for the next couple of years. So sometimes there's growing pains with the young secondary. Obviously, Alabama's not in the 12-team playoff, so it's hard to imagine more growing pains than that for that particular program. But you're going to reap the rewards now as these outstanding athletes develop and gain the benefit of the experience. And you're just adding to the party here with Calhoun. And
Damani Jackson, who started at corner for them, has a big NFL draft decision coming up, of course, transfer from USC. So it'll be interesting, man. He didn't start at Utah, but you'd have to think there's a decent chance that he takes one of those spots for Bama.
Yeah, and look, who's going to play the nickel? And Mbakwe is going to be playing both ways.
Right.
That was part of the deal with him coming back. So as he plays more offense, maybe this guy allows you to play him on offense and not lose the outstanding talent that he has in the secondary. You replace him with someone who's also young and a very, very good player.
All right. Well, man, it's been a long week. It's been a long couple weeks here following the transfer portal, D. And we've been coming at you live every day here on Group Chat Football, as this is our daily show. We talk portal, we talk coaching movement. Expect the carousel to be ratchet it up a bit here again as Washington State. There's an opening there as Jake Dickert, their former head coach, took the job at Wake Forest. There was some talk about Ben Arbuckle, of course, the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma now, maybe going back over there to Washington State, but it looks like he's staying put. So we'll be following that over the next week or so here, but would expect them to want to make a hire pretty quickly there. But we'll see how that affects everything else. You know, we saw Nick Saban step down late in the cycle last year, and that kind of made everything ratchet back up again. We saw that with Dave Clawson, obviously to a way lesser extent the other day with Wake Forest, but carousel's open, man.
Yeah, one domino impacts the other. Same thing at quarterback, right? There's only one quarterback spot, only one coaching spot. So a lot of things can change. Very interesting, but we'll give you all the latest here on the portal, recruiting, coaching changes, daily on Group Chat Football Live. See you tomorrow.
Like and subscribe. Appreciate everyone's support.